Hello, I'm Scott Stornetta, and this is another edition of Our American Dreams, an original group of 8 different people that my wife and I have chosen that we feel are among the most honest and wise people in America that we personally know. And today we're hosting Michael DiMare, a friend of mine for many years.
Decades.
I've learned a lot from Michael just by observing the good things that he does, but it's not time for me to talk. So we're going to jump right in and talk through the 5 standard questions that we're asking all of the people we interview. And again, this is not a politically correct interview. You're invited to speak candidly, say whatever you think is the appropriate thing. There are no guardrails here. We've
Okay.
come to hear you authentically.
Well, I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Okay. So we'll start off with the first one. Is there someone whom you've known personally, perhaps an ancestor or relative of a previous generation, that you admire as one who epitomized realizing their American dream?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the first thing obviously would be almost everyone in my family in some way or another, previous generations. I come from an immigrant background. My father was first generation, I guess. English was not his first language. He was an anchor baby. I think he was born a few months after they arrived. So first I would say my grandfather, who after World War One, his family was slowly starving to death. They couldn't, subsistence farming wasn't really working.
And
Um,
where was that?
in Italy, in central Italy, just
Central
south,
Italy.
they owned a small farm. And so he decided to come to America because his other relatives, uncles and cousins and things had told him that there's work for those willing to work and you could send money home. So he went to America and looked for his family, and they had farms or they worked on farms in America. So he got a job working on a farm, and the fascists came to power while he was here in America
So
in
that would have been in the
20s.
20s.
Yeah, and he realized that they were going to start another war, or at least he thought that they were going to start another war. So he changed his plans and applied for citizenship and continued working and saving his money. Because if he had gone back to Italy, he would have been drafted back into the army. And he was a decorated war hero in World War One, but he did not like war. So he did not want to do that again. He became an American citizen and then went back to get his family out. And being an American citizen, they couldn't throw him in to the army. And he was able to, with the help of the US Embassy, bring his family to America.
So he switched from sending money home to bringing his family back.
Yes,
And
it was not his intention.
and he used
But part of the American dream is, in a sense, being able to redefine what your goals are on the fly. Nothing is
absolutely.
set in concrete in America.
And
When he came
so he
back,
also used his citizenship as his shield and protection against getting
yes,
conscripted.
it
Great.
was a change of plans, and it was a good plan. It worked for him. They gave him a hard time in Italy to get his family out. They wanted him back in the army because he had done very well in the last one. But when he came back, it was early 1930. And of course, the stock market crash had happened. And well, farm work wasn't easy to find. So instead of going to upstate New York, where his family was settled, his cousins and his uncles and things like that were settled, he went to New Jersey and he redefined himself again. He became a factory worker and he was able to maintain employment all through the Depression, right? So he went from being a farmer, he was a farmer back in Italy, to being a farmer here in America, to then becoming a factory worker, to becoming a homeowner, and to raising American children. He was very proud of the fact that his son both fought. Well, my uncle fought in World War II, and my father fought in Korea. And he was very proud that he had raised his children to be they loved America. My father and my uncle both loved America.
Now you
So
mentioned the whole he was able to own a home and
yeah,
raise a family. Often that's tied to at least one dimension of the American dream. You think that was
yes.
meaningful to him?
And yes, but what was most important to him, I had the good fortune of knowing him when I was a kid. He lived to be 80, 88 maybe. Was that, oh, wait, I just lost my train of thought. It wasn't so much the ownership, it
Mhm.
was the ability to redefine himself,
Okay.
to break out of the cycle of poverty. One of the problems with Italy and possibly with Europe in general is depending on what your last name is and what town you're born in, and who you know, your life path is set in concrete. You are, oh, you're a peasant from the countryside. You're never going to get into the right schools. You're never going to get an education. You're never going to be able to really change. A serf is a serf is a serf for multiple generations. You don't ever change it. In America, for my grandfather, he was able to redefine who he was. He was no longer a subsistence farmer. He was a factory worker. He was a homeowner. He was he moved. My uncle used to joke, we had heat, he would say, in Italy, in our house. We had a heated house. And I'd say, oh, what did you use to heat it? He says, the animals. We would, bring all the farm animals into the first floor of the house and we would sleep in the haylofts above. So they were very poor. And he was able to create a new reality for himself. And he was very proud of the fact that his sons did the same thing, each in their own way in different directions. But my father was able to go from the ghetto kid to a person who owned a home in upper middle class suburbia. And for him, the path was through the unionized labor. He was able to get a good union job that paid benefits, that had a pension plan, that had health insurance and things like that. And he was able to navigate from urban poor, where you're kind of trapped in this endless cycle of poverty, to suburbia, and all of his children went to college. He was very proud of that. He wasn't able to go to school. It wasn't really an option for someone like him. So yeah, I do know people that personally that lived that American dream. And one of the key components of it was the ability to there's kind of a personal anonymity in America. No one can listen to your name and say, "Oh, we know what kind of person you
We've
are."
already slotted you.
Now, that being said, in this country now, if your skin was brown, when I was coming of age, yeah, Italians were still thought of as, well, you put them in, they become auto mechanics. Like, in the town I grew up in, all the shopkeepers and all the gas stations and all of the manual work was done by the Italians in the town. They kind of, I was very proud of it at that time. It felt like they ran things, but
Well,
it's
why
also
don't we turn now then, if we could,
yeah.
to your own experience? Namely, this is the second question. What about you? In what sense has your own life, with all of its challenges as well as successes, been a realization of your American dream? And can you sort of describe the process?
Yes, I am just so my grandfather went from peasant farmer to city dweller and American homeowner. My father went from urban ghetto to suburbia. I was born in Newark in the ghetto, and I started my career as a ditch digger, as a laborer. My father helped me get a job with the International Brotherhood of Laborers and Papers. I used that money to go to school. I got a job working in a factory, eventually working into designing hardware, designing things as an engineer, eventually working my way to research. And I wound up as a director of R&D in my company before I left. So yeah, I lived that.
So
Redefined.
again, I just
Yeah.
can't resist interrupting and saying, so from auto mechanic to quantum mechanic.
I wish I had started off as an auto mechanic. A ditch digger doesn't have that many skills.
No.
From ditch digger to researcher, yeah. In the
Anyway, I
sense that
interrupted you. You were
American
on
dream.
a roll. Keep going.
And I would say that at each stage of my life, the ability to redefine who I was, to not be constrained by who my family was, now, in America, the old families of Boston or the old families of Philadelphia, their names themselves open doors. What is it? Oh, like George Bush's middle name is Walker. And evidently it's Walker because that's a family name that's important. And the Walker family had connections and things. There is a segment of American society is living a very different type of American dream. Maybe it's
Mm.
based more on what they've accomplished in their legacy of their family. But I think for many Americans, the American dream is to define who you want to be and work towards that goal rather than rest on the laurels of your ancestry
Again, I
of
think
land and gentry.
that's a terrific phrase. Define who you want to be,
Yeah.
and then what did you say? Work towards becoming that?
Working towards that goal, sure. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to be that goal. I can tell you a funny story. When I was a senior in high school, my guidance counselor calls you in and says, "So, what are your next steps?" And I said, "I want to be a scientist." And they said, "You're not on a college track. You should be an auto mechanic." That's actually what they said. And I was like, "No, no, I want to be a scientist." They said, "Well, you didn't take the right classes." One of the problems of being from poverty is you don't know. I realized this years later, is you don't know what you don't know, the unknown unknowns. Like um, you
Until
don't,
it's too
I
late,
didn't know there
sort
was
of.
such a thing as a college course track in high school. So I took things that, this guidance counselor said, would you like to sign up for metal shop and wood shop and things like that? And I said, oh yeah, okay, I'll do that because I know how to do those things. I watched my dad working his whole life. And so, you know, not knowing that you don't even know how to play this game is one of the biggest, um, but at least in America, you have a chance. You can say, I want to be a scientist. And if you're willing to pay for it, you can go to put yourself through school, at least at the time. I was able to put myself through school. And eventually, I got a job in uh, production support, like on a factory floor, because they felt, well, he knows what he's doing with his hands. And it took me 20 years to get into research, or actually more like 15 years to get into research. A lot of twists and turns, but with each one, I was given the opportunity to redefine who I was and what I could do. And one of the strengths of America is because we're all from different places, you can't make that assumption based on my name or my face, what I'm capable of. So you kind of give people the benefit of the doubt, always with the caveat that for many people, there wasn't that benefit of the doubt. And that's one of the final thought to share with the American people. We'll get to it at
We'll
the
get
end.
to that. But it also helps us segue into the third question, which is the wave a magic wand question, because this is really about how do we expand the opportunity so that more people can realize the American dream. Now, just to be canonical, I'm going to read the question verbatim. Can you imagine one thing in American life that, were it to change, would allow more people to realize their own American dream?
Yes. And it is that benefit of the doubt. And I will go back and I'll tell a little bit of a story at first. Um,
Stories
going,
are good.
huh?
Stories are good.
But this is more about how you interpret America. When I was a kid, I did like to watch Westerns, and I fighting the Indians or punching cows or whatever it is wasn't what I liked about it. What I liked was a stranger could walk into town and the tumbleweeds blow and nobody knows his name. And he says who his name is. And they take it on face value. And I thought this is so cool. This is really wonderful about America is that nobody knows your name. That personal anonymity. Now, the internet has brought a whole nother level of anonymity, kind of a structural anonymity, which is different. But in America, in a sense, there's a personal anonymity that when you start a new job, they don't know what schools you went to. They don't know what your work experience was. And because America really drives home the point, because people come from all over the world to be here, just because you have an accent or you speak differently, your face or your hair is different, people kind of have to take you at face value. If you say you can design hardware, they give you some hardware problem and they say, here, design a solution. And that's a real strength, right? I mean, part of the strength is that promise that you could be rich, come to America, you could be rich. So we have that the brain drain from the rest of the world that comes into America. We have the best and the brightest. But a second order effect of that is since they're coming from all over the world, we can't make any assumptions about the people we work with. And so we give them the benefit of the doubt. We may find out we don't like them for various reasons or we don't think much of them, but at the beginning, you get that initial benefit of the doubt.
I really
So if
like
I
that
had a magic
benefit of
wand,
the
I
doubt
would
phrase.
extend that
So
because
go ahead.
I the story continues with the first time I got pulled over by the police. I was in a neighboring town. I was 17. I got pulled over, and when the policeman walked up, he looked at me and he took out his gun. He didn't point it at me, but he unbuckled his gun and he took it out. And he asked me for my license and insurance. I didn't even know that this was like that. Why would you give him the license? And then he put his gun away and he looks at it and puts his gun away. And he said, I'm sorry, you matched the description of a car thief that's been operating in the area. And years later, I think back on this and I realize, oh, he didn't give me the benefit of the doubt.
Mm.
I was so terrified. I was shaking. I had a hard time opening the glove box to get the registration and insurance card out. I couldn't have told you my mother's maiden name at the time. I see some of these tragedies you see in the news, how they pulled him over and then he got out and in a way, he opened the car door in a way and they shoot him. And I realized that the policeman doesn't know this person. The person being pulled over doesn't know the police. The gap between their two communities might be so great that they don't understand each other's body language. They don't understand anything about each other. What could sound like an innocuous command sounds threatening to the other person. That kind of thing. So much misunderstanding. If I could wave a magic wand, I would extend that benefit of the doubt to everybody. It's hard to do though. It's very easy to, for example, to point your finger at the police and say, "Oh, they're all racists" or something. But the unknowing, not knowing if the person in the car has a gun that you pulled over, not knowing whether there's a potentially violent outcome, makes you very cautious. It puts it in a high stress condition, situation, and 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 navigating that situation without misunderstanding the intentions of the other person. It's just one of many, many structural problems with this kind of multi-ethnic society that we have. It's 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 hard to read someone's face when their face is very different than your everyone in your family. That you learn how to read someone's expressions because you learn as a child, and when you meet somebody who's looks different than they do, it's hard to see whether they're angry or they're happy or they're sad or they're preoccupied. So misunderstanding them and misinterpreting their actions and their words becomes that much more. It becomes much easier.
So
I
giving
wish
the
it was easier.
doubt, so giving the benefit of the doubt really is a
It's the
big
only
part.
reason that you can move forward in this world because they don't put if you don't get the benefit of the doubt, you're put in a box. You're a car thief because you've got that face. If you get the benefit of the doubt, you can be anything. You could be a brain surgeon. When my guidance counselor said, "You're not really college material," she wasn't being mean to me. She was trying to help. She
Yeah.
could not see me as a scientist. And
Mm.
you've known me long enough to know that that's what I did for most of my career.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, she could have, I mean, there are limits to like, what my dog might want to be a scientist, but yeah, I can't pretend that she's qualified. So that would be my magic wand trick. Is to
Okay,
doubt.
terrific. I hope America is listening because there's a lot of wisdom there. Okay.
Uh,
All right, let's go to the fourth question.
sure.
Often the one that people find most challenging to think about ahead of time,
Yeah.
but it's a deliberate part of this obstacle course.
All
Okay.
right.
So I'm going to read it verbatim.
Go ahead.
Who is the most honest and wise living individual that you know personally? And can you tell us how you've reached that conclusion?
The word wise, I have to say that I stumble over because there were many people that I considered wise, and there are still many people that I consider smart. And there are many people that I consider clever. When you're a young person, very often wise is, well, wizen means like a person who's gone gray, right? Wise comes from German, I think, that it means graybeard or something. A wise person or gone white. So there are many people in my career, in my young adult life that I looked up to that I truly believe were wise people. My friend Ellen Fenwick and Ed Banta, Jay Leonard. They were all people that in my professional life were kind and considerate and thoughtful and happy to explain things that and patient with a young person. Uh, your career, I don't know, did you have to manage a lot of people? Do you still manage a lot of people, or are you more of a small team type, your career? I had the misfortune and great fortune to manage a lot of people.
Yeah, I guess my answer there is that I have considered myself a lousy manager all throughout my career and have tried to avoid it like a plague. What I used to tell people is the best stock investment strategy is to find anything that I'm managing and short it.
Ah, oh,
But
I ask because I realize as I've gotten older that managing the impatience of young people is a real skill. And so some of the people that I still some of the people I consider wise now, they're my peers now, they're my age, were the good managers that I knew at my last job that could bring a team together, both working working with and through the impatience of youth and the rigidity of older people. It was a skill that I admired my whole career, like that, the ability to do that. I became one of those old people. Hopefully, I did an adequate job of bringing the young people along. Other than that, there are like my friend Roderick or Jason. They're people who they weren't put in leadership positions, but they had patience. One of the things that makes you wise is a sense of perspective. For example, my friend Roderick, I consider him a wise and honest person. He's large. He's tall and broad and very strong, and his ethnicity is African, Asian, maybe some European. So he presents as a very large, strong, brown-skinned man. And that puts a lot of people off. Yet Roderick always had the perspective, the patience, the capacity for working through those initial assumptions about him and about his skills. Now that I think about it and I articulate it in that way, uh, my friend Vince is also like that. Large, and he happens to also have dark brown skin. He's from Ghana and no, Guyana. Um, but also I think he puts people off sometimes because of his his size and strength. And he is also a person who can see past that and kind of absorb that initial hesitancy on the part of other people and work through it and be gracious about it. And those kinds of skills are life skills that I'll work on my whole life. So yeah, very often the people I consider wise now at this stage of my life are people who live with in a in a more difficult situation than I do, who manage to do it with grace and good humility and good humor. And
you
so
know, what I find interesting in particular there is we could all say, gee, wise people are people that have perspective and maybe are willing to give others the benefit of the doubt. But what you're describing are people that start out sort of in a perceived hole,
yeah,
but are wise enough that they know what people are going to maybe think initially, but they have a perspective that they can grow out of it. They can
Yes,
they can
they
move
maintain
up
that
from
perspective.
being an auto thief up to being, you know,
Yeah, a lot of
respected.
times, well, I say it this way because there's a lot of people I know that you know some of the same people that I do. I most of the people that I work with professionally are all PhDs, all accomplished technologists, and they are also wise, but very early in their careers they're recognized as brilliant, and they're given the benefit of the doubt, and people listen to what they say. So yes, they are intelligent and thoughtful and um, far-seeing, but it's almost a given.
Hmm.
They're put in a position at such an age that you'd say like, well, they've always been like this. The people that I really admire their wisdom are the ones who are never gonna like they're gonna struggle against the position that people want to put them in. And it takes a type of wisdom that I really admire because it's very personal. It's about my how people view me and where the gaps between who I am. You have to know, what do they say? The first step of wisdom is know thyself. The people I admire now that are wise know themselves, know what they're capable of, know where they're trying to get to, and have the patience and the fortitude or the stamina to see past, to build those relationships on shared respect, on honor, on without anger. It's a poor man's way out to just get mad at people because they assume these things about you. You know,
The reason I'm nodding my head in part is I was interviewing someone a couple of days ago, and she came up with the proposition that the people that become wise and who truly realize the dream, it requires a certain amount of sacrifice and having to slog through challenging things.
yeah,
And almost flipping the script, it sort of says the people that sort of came, started out in a good position, they miss out on the opportunity to
they could
really,
still develop the wisdom. They can still get there, but they're being, in a sense, fate does them a disservice by
right,
not giving them the training material. They're
right,
usually stuck in a spot because they have height and hair or look. They look a certain way or they speak a certain way,
right.
or they have the right connections. Their father owned a company or something. And they're given the opportunity to demonstrate wisdom, but without any of the coursework, the what's it called, the prerequisite, without
Right.
any of the prerequisites. They're just placed in the advanced calculus class. And
Yeah.
it's a tragedy when it fails. It's wonderful when it works out. And if you're smart enough, you do realize it. And like I said, I know a lot of very accomplished, very intelligent people. I guess maybe you could say that I don't admire them in the same way as the people who are constantly struggling uphill usually it's because of the assumptions that people make about you. Oh, and it goes back to the one thing that I think, and the one thing that I admired about it's all the same theme. This America gives you this anonymity to move and freedom to redefine yourself. This mobility. It's not necessarily an economic mobility. It might be, it might be cultural. I want to be an opera singer, or I want to be a dancer, or something. But there's an anonymity in not knowing where these people are from. Now, that said, there is a lot that is wrong that we don't have right. I don't even want to say wrong about America. There's a lot of things, cultural components in America that work against that.
Hmm.
What I value in the American dream.
Right.
They want to say, well, you went to all the right schools, or you come from the right family, or you come from the right part of the country, or you speak a certain way, or you look a certain way, or um, and it could be, it doesn't, and it's not just about the easy path is to say, well, it's all about, white people or something like that. It's not. The purity tests that sometimes people want to apply to, well, I only want the best, so I only want to hire Ivy League. Now, they're not saying, it's not a. they really do honestly want the best, but their ability to define the best is very simplistic. So it's kind of a self-limiting thing. They don't give people the benefit of the doubt,
Right.
and
And they
that's
miss out on
they
what
miss out.
could
It,
come.
it compromises America. America can be much more than that.
Okay, well, America can be much more than that. Any final thought or advice you'd like to share with the American people?
Oh, gee, Scott, do you know anything about nonlinear chaotic systems?
A little bit?
I want to tell people that, like the weather, America isn't all rain. It's not all sun or all rain. It's not the best time ever or the worst time ever. There's a lot of good in America. There are certainly structural things that are not good in America. A lot of what's good in America or not good in America comes from your perspective, because we're all trying to get to some goal that we've defined within ourselves, which is a wonderful thing that Americans can do. But the structural components of a society that hold people back are kind of like the chaotic, it could be sunny in one part of town and raining in another part of town, and thermal updrafts are happening somewhere and downdrafts are happening someplace else. And it's like a nonlinear system. There's a lot of good and bad happening all at the same time.
Mm.
And it's still worth putting your shoulder to the wheel and pushing, is what I would say to America. Not all doom and gloom. It's not all sunshine and roses. It's it's a process. And you should fall in love with the process, not necessarily the goal. Like I said in the opening, it wasn't what my grandfather accomplished that I admire. It was his ability to change where he was trying to get to because the situation changed. He couldn't pick fascism coming to Italy. He couldn't pick the Depression coming to America, but he was able to adapt and change and redefine who he was at each stage. My father's life was like that. My life was like that. It's what I'm most proud about, but in America. I had a friend that was from England, and he loved that fact that you could go to a different town in America and nobody knows who you were. He says, based on my face and the way I spoke, everybody knew exactly what town I came from in England. And they know exactly what schools I went to when I went to university. And they knew everything about me just when I walked into the room.
It was already too late.
Yeah, two-thirds of what he was struggling against was already settled by the time once he walked into the room. America doesn't have that. I think we should structurally work against um, the momentum that builds that in some area or in if it's not a Silicon Valley deal. Oh, if this technology didn't come out of Silicon Valley, it's not legitimate. I mean, it's a very simple thing, but you see where all the money goes. And it's sloppy thinking, but sloppy wins a lot of times. Clever, quick to move and make a decision. A snap decision does work a lot. And I think America should be more thoughtful and more patient and realize that, like I said, these are not the best of times and these are not the worst of times. These are,
But still times worth giving it a shot is to
yes,
me what you seem to be saying.
yeah, that's it. It's still worth putting your shoulder to the wheel and pushing
Okay.
because we're not stuck. We're not rolling. It's just a process.
All right. Well, I think that's as fitting a way for us to wrap up this. Really appreciate your time. It's been a pleasure to visit. And
I always enjoy talking with you.
this has been another edition of Our American Dreams. Thanks.
You have a great day. Ciao.